I knew when I guess at the point where he got sick, and then I knew that he was going to die.
Welcome to The Discerning Mother, the podcast for Jesus-loving moms who want to tune out the noise and tune into God's design for motherhood. I'm Brigid, a board-certified women's health coach, holistic health practitioner, birth nerd, and homeschooling mom of 5. I help moms to heal their minds and bodies, trust their instincts, and embrace the beauty of the way God created them. Here we talk about birth, hormones, motherhood, faith, and anything else. Let's go. All right, welcome back to The Discerning Mother. Today I'm here with JoBeth, and this is going to be a really great conversation, but a hard conversation probably. So, JoBeth, why don't you go ahead and give a little bit of an introduction about yourself?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. So I have a lot of hard conversations. I have hard conversations every day, and that's just kind of part of what I do. In 2008, I graduated from high school and everything was good. And I knew that I wanted to help people in my life. I just didn't know how that was going to come about because I'd had a seemingly perfect life. And I was like, nobody's going to relate to me. But I wanted to help people. So from there, I went into education. And at that time, I also met my husband. And, we fell in love and got married and things were really, really good. And about 2-3 years into our marriage, we started trying to have kids. And we realized really quickly that we were not going to be able to have kids. And so we went the route of infertility treatment. And so we went through all that and just one failed attempt after another failed attempt after another failed attempt. We went to doctors all over the United States, the best ones that we have. And it was just one no after the other. And so that led us to adopting our kids that we have now. And we had our kids for about 5 years, and we bought our farm that we'd always wanted. And my husband built us a house here. And then about a year after that, he started getting really bad headaches. And they just kept getting progressively worse until we decided that we were going to go to the emergency room. And within an hour of being at the doctor, they had diagnosed him with glioblastoma, which is a deadly brain cancer, and told us basically that he had 12 to 16 months to live and sent us home. And so from there, we started, in my mind, I thought, he was going to be the one that survived it. Like, this was going to be our testimony. This was going to be, he was going to be the one that beat it. And as you know, he did not make it. He passed away almost exactly a year after his diagnosis. And so with that whole experience leaving such an impact on my life, I started working in grief and helping women kind of navigate the trenches of this deep, dark cloud that grief is. And I do that through one-on-one work and also group sessions for people who are more into that avenue.
Can you give us, though, like just a little bit of an idea of like timeline of everything? You said you graduated in 2008.
Yeah, graduated in 2008. We got married in 2011. Started going through infertility stuff in like between somewhere around 2013, 2014. He got diagnosed in 2022 and then died in 2023.
And so what about, you said you adopted children? How, like, just for listeners, like, can you tell us a little bit about your kids?
Yeah, I can share a little bit about them. So we knew we weren't going to be able to physically have children. And so from there we started, looking at other options. And so we looked at adopting through an agency, and it was going to be really expensive. And we had already spent way more, a way larger amount than we wanted to. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to pay even more now to adopt. And so we kind of both came to the conclusion that we wanted to adopt through foster care. And so through a friend of a friend, we ended up getting connected with our kids outside of the state, outside of DHS, all that. Like, we just started babysitting them. And then when they were available for adoption, we were the first ones, we were the second, and we had developed a relationship with their grandma, and she really wanted the kids to have a mom and a dad. And so she was like, I want them, but, I want them to have a mom and a dad. And so she decided to let them come to us, which was the second option that DHS was considering. And yeah, that's kind of how that all came to be. And they were 2 and 7 when we got them.
Wow. And was that like whenever your husband passed, was that, how far before was that?
About 5 years.
Okay, nice. Okay, and so this is just, my brain is going like so many different directions because you're in such a unique place where you have unfortunately gone through this like terrible, terrible, terrible hardship, but now you're in this place where you are helping other women and like sharing about it. And I think that that's so amazing because I feel, at least personally for me, I'm always kind of like afraid to ask the questions. If you could tell somebody like me who maybe doesn't have too much experience with incredible grief like this, like losing a spouse, what do you want people to say to you whenever you say like, I'm a widow?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. I mean, I think that we would want people to acknowledge that like it's a bad thing, but I think that beyond that, like, be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry you had that. I'm sorry that happened to you. But then to just quickly move on, because I feel like there is like typically a long pause between when you tell somebody something and then when you get to actually have the conversation you came together to have. And so it's like, yes, it's a part of the life journey, but at the same time, it's like, you as a widow, you don't want to hash that out with a stranger. Like, It's not like, let's just not go there and be like, oh yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. And then let's move on with it. Cause it's just, like I said, it's not something that you're going to go into, detail with a stranger.
Yeah, I know. So I work with a lot of moms who've experienced loss. And I know one of the things that they always say is like, please don't say like, I can't imagine. Please say, like, instead maybe like ask me about the baby, or like ask me about what he or she looked like, or like what we named him or her. Like, is that sort of similar to?
I don't feel like, no,
Okay.
I don't want to talk about, like, it's not like I don't want to talk about it. Like, it's painful for me to talk about. But like, I just don't see value in having that conversation. If it's somebody that I'm building a relationship with and we're on like the third or fourth conversation or something, and they're like, I would love to know about your husband. Like, at that point, yeah, but to just like start talking to a stranger and be like, let me tell you all about who he was. Like, I don't feel like I wouldn't do that. I'd be like, why are you asking me this?
Yeah.
Like, and I may be, I know that a lot of people do want to talk about their person, but I think there is a time and a place for it. And, in a friendship, letting your friend like kind of review that relationship and talk about it and share with you. Like, people do a lot of times with like, oh, I didn't know your husband. I'm like, he was a great man. Like, he was just good. Like, that's what I want people to know. And, he had a huge heart. He was selfless. Like, I can think of all these things that I want people to remember him as, but it's just not a conversation. Nobody's ever like, that's not happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see that some people want to talk about it. I think it just depends on your personality.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so that's good information to know. And so you mentioned that you've always kind of like had this heart to help others. So what really, actually, to back up a little bit even further, so you've gone through a pretty rigorous certification. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I went through the grief recovery method training. So the grief recovery method is an evidence-based program, which was really important to me because I feel like there's a lot of people. I mean, I don't feel like it. There are so many people on the internet that are, promising results and saying this is going to happen and that's going to happen. But this one is one that like we actually have evidence. Like, it went to the researchers, and they prove that, once you go through this program, you actually are like, you feel better. And like, that's the goal, right? So in grief, like, we're not trying to take you like from zero to hero. We're trying to take you from zero to I feel okay. Like, I feel okay. Everything feels a little bit more manageable now. And so as a specialist, I went through the program. It's to go through the grief recovery method as a client, you would go through it in 7 to 8 weeks. But we went through it in 3 days. And so it was very intensive, very exhausting. Like, there was like nothing left in me by the end of the day, because we went through it as like ourselves. And so we had a really wonderful instructor that took us through it, where we got to experience it, and then they taught us how to teach others and walk others through it. But just a really beautifully well put together program. And you're going to get results. I always tell my new clients, if you go 110% and I go 110%, like, you're going to get massive results. But if you go into anything that works and you put in 50%, like, it's not going to work for you. you know? So, and I'm really careful about who I do work with, because people who are on the fence or who don't really know if they want to be better or not, or get better, or move forward, like those are not my people, because they almost always drop out because they weren't all in to begin with. And then when things got hard, they were definitely out. And so I try really hard to invest in the people who are really ready to work and make a change in their life.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true, because I've talked to many women who say that they desire healing and say that they desire to feel better. And I'm sure that they do desire it, but they're not at that place yet where it's like, and now I'm ready to make a change. It really relates almost, I'll use the weight loss example because that's super tangible, where it's like you can desire to lose weight, but until you're like actually convicted about it, you're not going to do anything about it. And yeah, I think that's super important.
Yeah, there's a huge difference. It's like, and I think the weight loss one is a huge, or a great example of that, because like everybody, and I'm kind of going through my own experience right now, because like I've put on like 15 pounds that like I don't want to carry. And I kept saying, oh, it's my hormones, or oh, it's this, or oh, it's that. Well, then I got like fed up with it and started counting my macros and put myself in a calorie deficit. Guess what happened? I lost weight. It wasn't my hormones. It wasn't my cortisol, like it wasn't that I couldn't eat certain foods. It was just that I was overeating. And it took me getting to a place of just being fed up with it to be like, you know what? I'm going to be in a calorie deficit for the next 2 months and see what happens. And I think you really got to get to that place, because if you're not all in, it's not gonna work. It's not.
Yeah, for sure. And so, how did you know that moving into, what's the like the grief specialist you said? Is that this title? How did you know that you wanted to move into that grief specialist role after your husband passed?
I knew when I guess at the point where he got sick, and then I knew that he was going to die. It was somewhere around in there. I was like, this is terrible. This is like, I honestly cannot imagine like things being worse, even though like looking back, I'm like, okay, it could have been a lot worse in a lot of ways, but like it felt so bad. And I'm like, if I can figure out how to get through this, I was sitting in there at my table. I was like, if I can figure out how to get through this, I'm going to take as many women as I can through the process of healing, because I just knew how debilitating it was. It was life. Like grief was life. And so that was the moment I decided. And then it was 3 months after he passed that I decided I wanted to get certified to start helping other people. And that is really fast. But I told my therapist from the beginning, I said, I want to expedite the healing process. And she laughed and she was like, you can't do that. And I was like, watch me do it, because I love her still. But she was just like, girl, no. And because I think that probably a lot of people expedite it, like, I'm going to stuff this and I'm going to just power through this. But my approach was different. I was going to lean into this grief so hard. But also at the same time, I had 2 kids at home. So like there was balance. And I think that really helped me too, because a lot of people lean into grief really hard, and then they are leaning in so hard, they don't go to work. They don't go out in public. They don't do any of the things that they used to do. So there was some balance there, but I didn't stuff my feelings. I was busier than I wanted to be, which is a really big thing. Most people think if you just stay busy, you're going to be okay. And being busy just prolongs your grief. So you really want to avoid that. But I do feel like I expedited it just because the pain was so terrible. I never wanted to have to revisit it again. And, I definitely wanted it to last as short amount of time as possible.
Yeah. Okay. And that's one of the things that I use the analogy of a broken leg, where it's like, yes, a broken leg can heal on its own, but you're going to see all these ripple effects where it's like you might heal crooked, and like that would affect how you end up walking, your hip, your knee, all these different things. And like that's sort of the same thing with what you're saying, is it's like it's this really fine balance of like not going too far left, not going too far right, like kind of staying in the middle and getting that support. Mm-hmm. But again, not trying to go too far extreme in either direction.
Right.
And so can you tell me how it was to navigate motherhood and grief and everything that comes with losing a spouse?
Yeah, so that was really hard. Kids grieve differently, like just as different as their personalities are. Like you see their grief, happening in different ways. I think that it's different. My daughter was 5. And so that was, maybe she hasn't experienced the death at the magnitude that like my son did, like feeling the major loss of it. Because my husband worked a lot. And so he was definitely big in her life, but it was also normal for him to not be there. And so I think for her, it might be a little bit easier. I also have to keep an open mind that she may still not have grieved him. And so that may be something that happens in a few years, that she starts feeling the impact of that. Something that was really important in our household that we kind of clung to as like a foundation was that we were not going to use my husband's death as an excuse for poor behavior. So we were allowed to feel whatever feelings we needed to have. So if we wanted to feel sad or mad or angry or whatever, it was fine, but we weren't going to be ugly to each other. We weren't going to do, things that were outside of our moral and ethical codes of our home. And so that was really important, a really important standard to set. As far as grieving with kids, it was exhausting. There was no energy. There was nothing in the tank. And I pushed through that. I started working out more and started taking ice baths and started doing like all these things like to try to, just make myself stronger and better during this time. But most of it was just letting them know that they could feel their feelings. We went to counseling every single week. It was the best day of our week. They were in basketball lessons. We were homeschooling. So we would, on Tuesdays, we would go to basketball lessons. And then after that, we would go to therapy together, the 3 of us. And then after that, we would go to this Mexican restaurant that we really loved. And it was just a real positive, it was a real positive day for all of us. And we always felt better when we left because we had a plan. We had a roadmap. We knew what direction we were moving in. And just staying real connected and talking. Mm-hmm. Like there's no emotion that's wrong. We just have to, talk about it, let everybody know where we're at, and just deal with things as they come up. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of parents make, not being able to handle their kids' emotions. So we dismiss them, or we, do something so that they don't feel those feelings. One of the saddest days I remember, my daughter was little. It was not too long after he passed. We were at the gas station, and I'd look back, and she just has tears. She would have been 5 or 6, and she just had tears rolling down her face. And I'm like, "What's wrong?" And she was like, "I miss Daddy." And it was so sad. And we were right by McDonald's, and I wanted so bad to be like, "Let's go get ice cream. Let's go get something to make you happy." Like that was my first response, because I was uncomfortable with her sadness. I wanted to switch the script really quick and be like, "Oh no, we're excited because we're going to get ice cream. We don't get ice cream very often, but like, let's do it today." That's kind of let's just go get some ice cream. I wanted to do that, but my training told me, no, just drive on home. Like, let her feel those feelings, because that's going to serve her more. And I can be sad. I cried too. Then I started crying. And it was just really sad. And I think we're afraid to experience sadness with our kids. My kids typically cry when they see me cry. That's just part of it. But I don't want to steal that vulnerability from them. So we just embrace it.
Yeah. That's so good. We actually, in my group program, we were just talking like a couple of weeks ago about feeling your feelings, because that's the thing, like so often, especially in motherhood, like it's easy to sort of just snuff them down because there's other things to worry about or other things to think about. But again, if you don't feel those feelings and like you don't allow your body and like your mind to experience that, it's never going to process what it needs to process and like release what it needs to release. So I loved what you said about that. Now, were you raised in a family that was how, like, that you were allowed to feel your feelings, or not? Is this a learned thing in adulthood?
I think with my mom, it was okay to have your feelings, but like I was okay to have my feelings, but she didn't know what to do with them. So there was that. And my dad, it was like the only feeling I remember him having was anger. Like that was the only emotion I ever saw. So, no. And I think that's probably pretty typical for most people. I feel like our generation is kind of flipping the script with that, and we need to. But no, it wasn't. It was something that I learned after my husband passed, because my husband was kind of like that too. Like, you don't need to cry or be sad because like you have too much to be thankful for. to be sad, and now kind of moving into a spot that's like, okay, something really terrible has happened, so I have permission to be sad, but also like I can be sad about whatever I want to be sad about. Like I don't have to like hide or stuff emotions. And so it was definitely a learned thing and took lots of
It's awesome.
therapy and coaching to
Yeah.
get to that point where it's like, I mean, I cry all the time now, but when you experience like deep loss like that, like you're able to tap into pain, other people's pain so fast. Like I could, like if you told me something, I could be crying in the next 3 minutes. Like just because I feel things at that level now, because I've been there, I can really easily access it and go back there again. Like I'm really, really comfortable with sadness.
Yeah, that's so good. And so one of the big things that I work on with clients is mind, body, and soul healing, not just mind or not just body or whatever. So I'm sure that that's also how you are trained as well. So how do you approach the whole person, grief and healing, instead of just like here's a coping mechanism to use, or like just like you said, kind of just like go get the ice cream so you don't really feel it. Like how have you noticed either in yourself or in clients that grief is showing up physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and how do you help them through that?
Yeah. So we start with dealing with what's causing the problem. So with whatever relationship or illness or whatever that's causing them the grief, like it really, we start there. And because I feel like when that, and it was true for me too, when that grief was so big, I couldn't think about like eating right. I was just trying to eat. Like, and I was eating unhealthy because people were bringing me stuff that tasted so good because they wanted me to eat because I had lost weight. Because I mean, food becomes irrelevant when you go through loss. Like it's just like for some people, and then some people, food is everything. And so I was one of those that are just like, I see no point or value in eating anymore. And so I would eat, but I was eating very unhealthy. The spiritual side of it is so individual to people. And so like I'm Christian, and so my connection with God was really important during that time. But what I have to do as a specialist is be really careful about the spiritual side of it, because most of the women I work with are Christian and they are angry with God because of this loss that's occurred. And so we kind of tippy toe around the conversation about God and about spirituality until we're through those first 8 weeks. And then we start getting into that. But you're right. It is those three things are so important. And I think when you're grieving deeply, you do your best to do them all three at the same time. But it is really hard for your body to heal when your heart is broken. And so I try to help heal the heart, and then they can work on healing their bodies. When I was newly grieving, so I would say the 3 to 4 months before he died and the 3 to 4 months after he died, like I was getting something called craniosacral therapy every week because I had a headache all the time. My skin was broke out, and I also had a cough. Like I was sick. I was just sick. Like my body was just had grieved itself to the point that it was giving up. And once my heart started to heal, those body problems went away. And so starting with the cause, which is the loss or the devastation, is where I go. And then we work our way up from there.
Yeah, that's so good. I love how you like that you said the heart first and the body will come after. It's so good. I feel like a lot of times it's kind of flipped nowadays where people will try to do the body side of things first because, again, that's what you can really see. But it's like you just said, it's not going to really do much unless you actually heal the underlying what's going on. Totally agree. And so another question that I get asked by clients, I'm not sure if you do or not, or potential clients rather, is like, what's the difference between what you do versus therapy? Like, can you speak to that for what your grief specialist?
Yeah, for sure. So we like in therapy, I feel like there's a lot because I've been in therapy, I know therapists, there's a lot of talking. And you kind of a lot of times just keep rehashing the same thing. And so with what I do, it's very strategic, it's very straightforward, and it's very articulate because it's an evidence-based program. So like we have to go through this process. Sharing is very guided. Like you don't just sit and talk for 45 minutes. Like you're so strongly educated. And I feel like that's something that is a huge part of what I do that maybe doesn't exist so much in therapy unless you're working with a grief specialist, is that like we're going to teach you about how to handle grief, what grief is, and really start dissecting what that looks like for you. And that's, we handle it, everything with this process. So it doesn't matter if you've been sexually abused, or if you have been, your house was robbed, or you have this diagnosis. Like we have this same process that we use. And a lot of what coaching is moving forward. Everything is done to heal and to make things better in the future, whereas therapy more digs into the past. And while we do that with the relationship, it's really with the intentions of visiting it quickly and moving forward.
Yeah, I think what you just said is like exactly what I would have said as well, and just perfect. Where, like you said, like you use the past, but you don't stay there. Like we really use it to move forward. And I always say also, like, to set goals, and how can we reach these goals? They don't have to be like, again, weight loss goals or anything like that, but just goals in terms of like, maybe you want to be able to, I don't know, take a nap every day and not feel guilty about it or something like that. That's one of the common ones for moms that I work with. And so if somebody is dealing with grief or overwhelmed by their grief, what are certain things that they can do to, like, what's the first step that they can take in order to at least start to confront that grief head on?
Well, most people run from their grief.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because like you have all these bad negative feelings that you don't want to feel. You're done with feeling them. You don't want to feel them. So I'm going to avoid them. I'm going to avoid them by staying busy. I'm going to avoid them by distracting myself with social media or drugs or alcohol or movies or whatever. So people find all kinds of creative ways to take their mind off their grief. And so what you want to do is understand that there is a chapter coming after this one. So we want to prepare for that next chapter, and we want to get to that chapter as efficiently as possible. And so the best thing you can do during this time is really, really, really lean in to your feelings. So feel them completely, name them. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm angry. And it's like, are you angry or are you disappointed? You know, like you want to really specifically name them. Journaling, getting these feelings out. There's so many things you can do to like fully feel the feelings. But I think that's the biggest mistake people make, is that they're just like, yeah, I'm not going there. I'm not feeling that. And that causes you to be pushed way down the road.
Yeah, no, that's so good. It is really hard to, I don't want to make light of it, because it is really hard to confront those past experiences and those past feelings, or those feelings that you have because of those experiences. And so one of the things that I hear all the time too is like, well, what I went through wasn't that bad compared to somebody else. Yeah. And so, yeah, so one of the things that I always try to really get across is like, it's relative, like trauma and grief are relative based off of your own past experiences and where you currently are now, the resiliency of your brain, like all these different things. So what would you say to somebody who's like, well, I just had this thing happen, it's not that bad, but they're clearly still being affected by it?
It's a problem because they're talking about it. So, I mean, we don't compare grief. Like everybody experiences grief at 100%. So whether you lost a dog or your daughter, like it's still experienced fully. And so we want to just be like, just call it what it is. Like you're grieving, and really just treat it like it's a big deal. Like I get calls all the time. People be like, you know, an older lady, their mom's passed away. And she's like, well, I don't want to talk to you about it because like you lost your husband and that's way worse. And I'm like, that's irrelevant. Like it's absolutely irrelevant. The thing is that your heart is broken, and it doesn't matter what caused it. We can come together and fix it.
Yeah, so good. And so can you tell me a little bit about the business that you have?
Yeah, so do one-on-one work with women who are grieving, and I take them through the 7-week process. So if it's individual, it's 7 week. If it's group, it's 8. So some women are like, there's no way I can sit in a group and listen to other people and their grief. And I'm like, same. People were like, oh, this grief group. I went to one and I was like, what is happening? Like, I can't be here. And like, I just couldn't. And it was more of just like me, like really judging everybody in that group and being like, you need to get it together. That's how I felt. Like, I was like, y'all need to get it together. And I was like, well, this is not good for me to be feeling this way about these people. Or you can't handle the emotions of other people in a group. And so your grief is so heavy. The thought of hearing about somebody else's grief is going to be too much. And so I always suggest group, because I think that it is important for us to have community. I think beautiful things happen in group because you really leave with some lifelong friends because you have these people that are walking through this with you. And really, a lot of them understand the magnitude of your grief because they have experienced something really bad too. And they can be there for you in ways that your family can't. And they want that community. But if you're like me and you're like, I need to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, and I don't want to include other people in that because I have my people, like I just need the results ASAP, then you would be a one-on-one person where we just get in and get you results and you don't leave with friends or anything like that. Like you're just, it's just you. But those are the two things I do. And then I do this a lot, like 4 or 5 times a week. I'm talking to people about grief and healing and really spreading a message of hope, because there were several weeks where I had lost my desire to live. I was never going to take my life, but I wished somebody would have took it for me. Like I was like fantasizing about getting in a car wreck or something so that it would just be over. And, you know, I really want to always speak to those people. I thought I was having this real individualized experience of having these certain thought processes of like not wanting to be here anymore and then feeling guilty for feeling happy and then like being overwhelmed with sadness. But really, it's pretty typical of a grief journey to feel all those things and to lose your desire for life. And so if somebody's like, oh, this one's about grief, chances are you've lost your desire to live at some point. And I just want to always have the opportunity to speak to people and let them know that there's something else coming, and it is beautiful and it can be great, but you have to face it and walk through the door.
Yeah, that's so good. So good about, again, facing it. And I think too that I was actually having this conversation with a group yesterday about, it was a new mom, and she was like, I have all these like intrusive thoughts in my head, and like I don't know where they're coming from. This isn't like who I am usually. She was like, I feel like I'm like all alone in this, like nobody, like something's wrong with me for experiencing this. We were all sitting around her and we were like, nope, like that's unfortunately pretty common. Like you're not alone in it, and like here's maybe ways that you can like help get rid of them or see somebody who can help you with that. But like what you were saying is so good, where it's, again, if you're feeling it, I'm sure somebody else has felt it too, or is feeling it currently. And so what's the best way that somebody can support somebody else? Like somebody can support somebody else who is grieving, whether that be a family, a friend, like what's the best way to support loved ones who are grieving?
Yeah, so I think however close you are to them is really important. So like you need to understand how close you really are to this person. But I think the biggest mistake that people make when trying to comfort people who are grieving is they want to say something to try to make them feel better. That's why we hear people say like, oh, well, you're young, you can have more children, or you're young, there's plenty of fish in the sea, or you're old, you guys got so many years together. Like, you know, whatever it is that people are saying, that they think they just are going to drop this wisdom on you and all of a sudden you're going to be better. And that there's nothing, you need to understand when you sit with this person that nothing you're going to say is going to make them feel better. And so letting them know you care by dropping off groceries for them. Food is just the biggest one, because like when you're exhausted, cooking is like not something you want to do. It's probably something most people don't want to do anyways, especially not when you're, you know, grieving. Sending cards, remembering birthdays and anniversaries is really important to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And so, and it's amazing how quickly people forget after your person's died. It was about 2 weeks when people stopped messaging me. Oh. And that's pretty typical. There were people who, and this is another thing I really want to caution people, a lot of people made empty promises to me and to my kids during this time. They would be like, I'm going to be here for you guys. I'm going to watch over you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And they never did, because a couple weeks after he had passed, everybody's life went back to normal, and so did theirs, and they were too busy. And so, like, I didn't hold it against them. I knew when they were saying it that they weren't going to do it. But, like, they now have guilt, and it's made awkward relationships, because people are like, oh, I made all these promises to her, and I never came back, you know? And so don't do that. But remembering birthdays and anniversaries is really important. So, if you remember maybe the passing anniversary or your wedding anniversary or the child's birthday, these dates are important. When I work with clients, their anniversary may pass. And that was true for me too. My first anniversary without my husband, one person messaged me, one person acknowledged it, and I have a big circle. Like nobody even, it was interesting to me how quickly people seem to have forgot about the kids and I.
Yeah.
And I didn't care. I didn't want to hang out with them either. Like, to be honest, like I didn't have time to hang out. There was no time for that. But a text message or a card or sending some flowers and just being like, hope these brighten your day or
Yeah.
Something. But another big thing you can do when you're sitting with somebody is just letting them talk to you and you validating their feelings. So they say something like, I'm just so sad. Well, of course you're sad. Why wouldn't you be sad? Like your person just died or this thing just happened. So like totally acknowledging that like everything they're feeling is totally normal and supporting them in that. That's basically all they want you to do.
Yeah.
Listen and validate.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. That's one of the biggest things with helping moms after births too, is they just want to tell their story, even if it went really well. Like they just want somebody to listen to them and to like hear what they're saying and to not say like, oh, well, thank God that you have a healthy baby, or like, good thing this thing happened, or like this happened to me. Like they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't really care that much. They just want to tell their story and have somebody sit and listen without any sort of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now before we wrap up, I just want to always ask, like, the last question is, what do you want the discerning mother to know?
That no matter what you're going through, it doesn't have to be something super traumatic like losing a spouse, but no matter what you're going through, like you have the opportunity to lean into it and make it something really incredible, or you can totally become a victim to it. And no matter what it is, I'm literally saying no matter how bad it is, ultimately you have a decision, and that decision is, what are you going to make of this? You can't control what happened, but you have 100% control of how you handle it. And just really, I want you to think about the possibilities and really live in what's possible, not live in what happened to you.
Yes. Can you preach, please? I know it's so hard to get to that place sometimes, though. All right. That was amazing.
Sure, yeah. Thank you.
Amazing. And so how can people find you if they want to reach out and maybe get some more info about you?
Yeah, so on Facebook, I'm JoBeth Polly, and then NWA Grief Specialist that's my website, and then Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And some of my stuff still says JoBeth Evans because I recently got remarried. So my name did change. Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, thank you so much for chatting. And again, definitely check out her links. Her website's really great and the program looks amazing. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.